Okay, so welcome to Understanding Ultra, Jody Raynsford.
Hello.
Hello. It's great to speak to you. I've been listening to you for years. It's nice to actually have a conversation where we actually talk to each other rather than me just talking to you and you don't answer that because it's a podcast.
Brilliant. That's it. Well, it's good to I like the idea of you listening to me and having a conversation with David and I in a car or wherever else. You know, that's always trying to have that pub feel, but you're the listeners, the person in the pub you just don't respond to. You just don't value their opinions.
Yeah, it's the guy sat like in the next booth to you that's listening to your conversation but is no part of the conversation. Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so for people that are unfamiliar with who you are, I've got some facts about Jody Raynsford. You probably tell me whether they're true or not. So
go for it.
You're a writer, a former sports journalist. You're a trained lawyer. You're an ultra runner. You're a marketing genius. You're the better half of the founding members of Bad Boy Running podcast. You're famous for popularising the MDS.
That's correct.
You're the original. You're the original vegan ultra runner.
Yeah.
And you own a copy of Born to Run, but you're not in it. That's an unusual fact about you. And you have a fear of strawberry milkshake projectiles.
That's absolutely true. Yes, all of those things are true. I do think it's quite grandiose calling myself a sports journalist because I was very much a journalist who found himself working for Men's Running. I've got to say, because before that I was a film and TV journalist. And so, that there's a particular set of skills you need as a TV and film journalist, which is mainly sitting around watching TV and film and drinking a lot as well. And so when you when I like as you mentioned in there, popularized the MDS, and I started writing for Men's Running magazine. That's kind of when I made the transition across, and it's a very, very different world. The world of like health and sports journalism compared with film and TV journalism. It's very, very different. It's not, the parties are rubbish, I have to say. Hardly any alcohol, vegan food. That's it. It's what you get.
Not as good. Yeah, not as good. So just could you just give us like a rundown then on how you got into running yourself, and then how you got to this place where you are now? So what was your route into running and ultra running?
Oh, I've always been known as like an academic person, but at school I always really liked athletics. I did like running, I liked athletics and stuff like that, but it was that classic thing of you as soon as it's not compulsory anymore, you just don't have to do it anymore. And so I didn't do it, and I was never really interested in team sports or anything else. And it wasn't until I was in my kind of late 20s when I was I living a very, very unhealthy lifestyle as a film and TV journalist. And I don't know what it was, something about, I don't know whether it was I like to think of it as like a midlife crisis or something that happened very early on. But I decided I wanted to run the London Marathon. And this was at the time when you could apply to the ballot. And if you didn't get in three times, eventually on the next time you'd get in. And so I thought, well, there's no chance I'll get in. I'll apply and see what happens. And I did get in, and I ran my first London Marathon in 2006, and it was horrific. It was as someone that's not a runner, following a training plan. I made all the classic mistakes. I mean, I was wearing like cotton t-shirts, and I was just wearing the same shoes that I'd go to work in. Like what I'd do is I'd have like a meeting at a pub with someone that I was speaking to and everything, and then I thought, oh no, I'll just run home from there. And when I was in London, and I think that could kind of make up my training and stuff like that. So it was so amateurish. I think and a lot of people do that, and I didn't really take it that seriously, but I did kind of follow a plan. And then And then I did it that once, and I kind of enjoyed it. I thought, oh, but I was really slow. I think I just crept in under 5 hours, and that's only because I was getting sponsorship for something, and someone said, if you go under 5 hours, I'll pay you £100 as opposed to £20 if you're over that. So that little thing like motivated me to just come under 5 hours, but it just took me ages. It was awful, and so I thought, next time I'll do it. I'll see if I can improve. And so I did it the next time, and it was, at the time, I mean, it's been beaten several times before, but since then, but it was one of those really, really hot days, and it was awful. And I think I finished it, and I was like in tears, not because I was like genuinely crying, because like my body was just like, what the hell have you done? Like some old lady asked me if I was all right because she thought I was going to be sick and stuff like that, and I was just like, this is awful. I never want to do this again. This is dreadful. That's it. My running career is over, and I have absolutely no interest in taking this on. And then for some reason, I picked up a book by a guy called Dr. Mike Stroud. And at the time, Ranulph Fiennes was doing this challenge. Of course, he'd done all his Antarctic challenges and things like that. And he was doing this challenge where he was going to run. And it sounds pretty pathetic now, but he was going to run 7 marathons in 7 days. And we was like, whoa, and like on 7 different continents. We're like, whoa, how's he going to do? How's he going to do that? Like 7 marathons in 7 days? You can't possibly do that. Like all the advice tells us that we have to like recover for 13 weeks after a marathon. And so he was doing that. So I read this book and Mike Stroud was the person that was doing it with him. And I read this book, and reading this book just changed my entire view of what like the human body could do and what it could be. And in it, he mentions that he did this race, and it was the 6th running of it. And it was a race called the Marathon des Sables. And reading it, I thought, this sounds utterly horrific. Like it was, the way that he kind of introduced it was talking about all the people that had got lost, all the problems on there, stuff like that. And I was just like looking at that thing going, how could anyone run something like that? It seems so ridiculous. And it planted this little seed, and there was nothing, you looked it up online, there was nothing to find about it anywhere really when I was like 2000, 2006, 2007. And but something just sort of stuck. And then at the time you had to apply for the MDS 3 years in advance, and so I sat there on a Wednesday morning, ready to like when it opens, ready to like to book my place, and I decided this is the thing that I want. This is the next thing that I want to do, and I don't know how I went from saying I'll never run again to then essentially my next race choice being the MDS. But that's what I did, and then as a result of that, I had essentially 3 years to practice with a pack, and that's where I kind of slowly got sucked into the subculture of ultra running. The old days where 12 people would the first ultra I did was also my first multi-day race, which was a thing called the Toad Challenge, and it was running from Oxford to London over 3 days. And I turned up, and it was like any other race, there was like 12 people there, and literally we started the race, and those like 11 other people ran across that field. That's the last I saw of them until each night when I got in. I essentially just was on my own for most of this race, and it was a proper eye opener. I mean, like talk about a learning experience, and it was awful. And my like legs blew up, and I had like blisters everywhere, and it was just, the whole thing was horrific. Just the whole thing was horrific. But then you kind of learn a bit, you do a bit more. And when I was doing this, like I was saying, I was working in the in journalism, in film journalism, stuff like that, but more and more of my time was taken up by training, by going out and doing back-to-back 25 milers on weekends, just a huge amount of effort, dieting, like reducing the weight I carried and everything like that. And people seeing me go through this transformation. And then I think a new magazine was starting up called Men's Running Magazine, and when that happened, the editor kind of reached out and said, "Oh, we've never covered someone running something like the MDS before. Would you like to kind of give us a view of what you're doing and stuff like that?" So I thought, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to have these epic pictures of me running through the desert, and me like this like proper athlete type thing. And they essentially just stuck me in a sand pit at Crystal Palace and covered me with all sorts of stuff. It was the most like humiliating thing, but that was the point at which they kind of, I started working in journalism. I started working in running journalism and health journalism. And so that kind of like doing the MDS kind of changed my life in that respect. And so that's how I got into ultras. I didn't go through all of this, going to 5Ks to 10Ks, to learning how to do all these different types of runs that help you develop your speed and everything. So I never had to. All of my bests have come as a result of training for ultras. And so then after I did that, it became my job to do races. So I could, I was doing essentially like a couple of marathons and an ultra every month for work, getting paid to do it, getting kit and everything like that. I did the Transalpine, which was an incredible race. A whole load of ultras that were kind of coming out and doing it, and all that. Suffered hideously from plantar fasciitis because I made the same mistake as everyone else did who read Born to Run. And so yeah, that was it. And then when I did that, the result of that was I went to they tried to put me on. What the thing about the editor at the time was that he really enjoyed making me, because I wasn't a good runner in any way. Now when they get people to write these reports, they all bloody win it, don't they? They win it, or they're incredible runners and stuff like that. Before, it was just like, right, let's send one of our journalists to do this race and hope it's absolutely horrific, and then they're going to have an awful experience and everything. And so that's when I kind of got shoved to go to Sierra Leone to do Sierra Leone Marathon, and that's where I met David for the first time. Of course, my co-host on Bad Boy Running. And so yeah, it all flowed from that.
Apologies, I think my signal is a bit rubbish. You were breaking up a bit during that.
Okay.
I'm just going to try and join off my phone. Give me a second and see if I can see if I can do it this way. Can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yeah, okay? I can hear you. Yeah, absolutely fine. Right.
Apologies about that.
That's right.
I've just realised that I've lost all of my questions now because they were on my phone. I'll see if I can.
You just go. That's the good thing about having a co-host. You make them do all the homework. I say do all the homework. Do slightly more homework than you're doing, but you just the key thing is to just after a while just go, and why did you do that then? Why did you think that then? but why did you do that then?
So while we're talking about Bad Boy Running, then what was sort of the inspiration for starting a podcast? Was people, I know that loads of people started a podcast during the pandemic because it was something to do, and and I include myself in that. Finding myself with some time to do something, I thought I'll have a go at it. What was your sort of inspiration, you and David, for starting it?
It was actually just really, really organic. I mean, the fact is, once we met on at Sierra Leone, we actually became really good friends. And so, we'd meet up with each other. We never did a run together or anything else like that, God forbid. But we'd meet up and go to the pub, and we'd talk about stuff, and we would talk about running and things like that. And it was just while we were doing that, we were just making the comment of there's nothing. We were talking about things like Runner's World and all the different magazines there are, media and stuff like that. And this was a time when men's running also decided to kind of try and be more serious as well. So, there was no use for me anymore in at men's running. So I was kind of my involvement was wound down as the editor changed as well. So that kind of happens when magazines happen. Also, they tell me. But yeah, and so it kind of felt like the conversations we were having weren't really reflected in anything. And like I said, I was never like a runner like David was. But we have so much in common when we talk about things like races, race experiences, stuff like that. And so we were just like, well, why don't we just try recording a podcast or something like that, where we're just talking to each other like we're talking now, like in the pub, literally like this. and it was all, and we thought about, oh, well, is it worth it? Like, who's going to listen to it? Just went through that for like a year of just going, oh yeah, let's do a podcast. Oh, hilarious. And then just one day we decided, we're like, well, let's give it a go. And then we sat down, basically me in my front room in his office, and just had a chat about various things, favorite races, different things like that. And as we were doing it, it was like, actually, this kind of works. This works quite well. And it was really enjoyable. And that, I think that's like the anyone that's doing a podcast realizes after probably episode 8, whether they want to carry on doing a podcast or not, because if you're really struggling at that point and it's not fun and it's not enjoyable and stuff like that, you're like, well, okay, maybe I'll write a book instead, or do something else. And that's the thing. And so it was like very organic. Like, literally, David did a really good job of just getting a lot of his friends to listen to it and stuff. But there was hardly anyone listening to it at the start. There was hardly anyone listening to it for the first, couple of years. It was just a handful of people. But even though it was a handful of people, they seemed to be like really, really enthusiastic about it. Like, there's a real a real cabal of people who are now inside the Bad Boy running community, who kind of make up that nucleus of people who are like there from the start, and they love the fact that they were there from the start, and and they talk about, they have a certain level of disdain for us and a certain level of disdain for people who are all enthusiastic about it, because eventually they'll have that squeezed out of them by being in the group for long enough. But it just kind of developed from there. And but there weren't that many running podcasts around there. There was I think I made a list of about 5 or 6 running podcasts, me with my marketing head on, like, what colors should we have, stuff like that, just having a look at all the other podcast thing, and they all were kind of relatively bland and stuff like that. So we kind of just went, right, well, we didn't even know what we were going to call it right up until we like published it. So I was like, whatever it is, it's got to be red and white. We know it's going to be red and white. What should we call it? And David's like, let's call it Bad Boy Running. And at that point I should have said, no, let's think about this. Let's call this something that it's not going to cause a shitload of issues later on. But we called it that, and then it went out, and and then part of the fact is that we started to like weirdly attract really good guests, and we don't really know how it happened. Like, David's a very good at talking, very good at persuading, things like that. But we started getting some like pretty good guests, and that kind of built up the momentum. And the thing is, which I was always really like sure on, in terms of how we would always operate, that we would never try to be too professional. Firstly, because it's effort. Like, we're busy, both of us are really busy, but I've got kids, he's got commitments and stuff like that. It's like, as soon as we start needing to prepare for stuff, and so like, let's just literally go into everything with a like exactly the same mindset of 2 people who don't quite know all the facts, who kind of like a lot of the listeners, and because of that, we ask questions that other people don't ask. We probably say a lot of really stupid stuff that other people don't. We say some really obvious stuff, like we had like, this is the lack of thing. We had Chrissy Wellington on the podcast. And I'd never heard of Chrissy Wellington. I don't know anything about triathlon. I don't know anything about. Didn't know. It was only like, and David was going, oh yeah, Chrissy Wellington, blah blah blah. And it was because we have so many people we're into. Like, we interview someone every week, so there's this like famous names mixed in with names we don't know. But it all comes a bit of a blur. And I mean, like, literally, like 5 minutes before she's on, I started looking up like Chrissy Wellington, and I'm like, fuck hell, like she's like Miss Iron Man. Like, this is like incredible, right? We clearly haven't done anywhere near the amount of research that we need to do in order to get this full justice. But part of that mean that actually we went in and we started talking about stuff that she hadn't talked about before. I think in that particular one we're talking about bullying in sport and bullying in some training and things like that. So it was really it was a really interesting thing. We were kind of not I'm making this sound as though this is a really clever USP we've come up with, but it wasn't. It's just by not preparing that much, what it did is actually open the fact that we could explore stuff that we didn't have to hit certain beats of like, oh, we need to make sure we cover your career here, or we need to make sure you do that. Because now we just get people back. And look, we made a bunch of suggestions, which I'm sure with you, with your own podcast, you're thinking, right, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. And all of that stuff like goes out the window as soon as you start recording it. Like, I think originally we said the podcast is never going to be more than half an hour, which essentially then when you start attracting a predominantly ultra running, marathon, long run thing, the episodes were going up to like 3.5 hours at some point, barely edited. And that wasn't to do with that we were lazy about editing. It was more to do with the fact that conversations were good. I mean, like, I think the Laz one was a real, with Laz Lake of Berkeley Marathons. That was a really big one. But the other thing that helps, which I think, there's a lot of people that get really annoyed at us, is that I don't know who half these people are. So we have this thing of like, and David doesn't either sometimes. So people be suggested, and neither of us will do enough research, and we'll get someone on. Like, we got Courtney DeWalter on because we heard that she'd done the Big's Backyard Ultra. But that's all we got her on for, because we thought, oh, this is a run that's done. We didn't know like she was like incredible, like she was, and it was only until like afterwards we kind of realized this. And so yeah, I mean, the only person I think we've interviewed that I've been genuinely kind of nervous about interviewing was Dean Karnazes the first time we interviewed him, because Ultramarathon Man was kind of like my, just a massive inspiration, and I absolutely loved it. And I was like, when we were doing that, I was like, oh my god, I don't know. But again, we talked about stuff with him that he'd never talked about before, in a way that he'd never talked about. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for especially some of the Americans to warm up a little bit when they're kind of faced with two British idiots. But yeah, that's how it developed. It was all very natural, all very what's the minimum we can do on this to make it work. And incredibly, it found a following. So that's how it developed.
I think that's the whole thing with Bad Boy Running, is it's like a niche of a niche, isn't it? Because you've got your like slick, well produced podcast. I'm not saying that Bad Boy Running isn't slick and well produced, but I think
we all know that when you say slick and well produced, it's not. We don't, and that's not doing down any of our producers or anything else like that. They do an incredible job with a terrible raw material that we give them. But we're certainly not like Marathon Talk or anything else like that. I was
thinking like like when you listen to like Rich Roll, and it's all like very calm and very like, everything just seems to flow, and everything's all he knows his knowledge of the guest is like infinite, but he still manages to bring out all this amazing information. But I think with Bad Boy Running, the thing is that it's like we said before we were recording, it's kind of like two guys talking in a pub, just chatting to a friend in a pub and asking questions because you're genuinely naive about something. So you ask a question and they give you an honest answer. And I think that's just something that's whether that's been missing from podcasts, I don't know, because podcasts haven't been around for a massive amount of time, have they? But do you think this is, I hear of more podcasts that are a bit more raw. Do you think that this is like kind of is it a niche area for you, or do you think there's going to be more podcasts that are just kind of not overproduced, just kind of just throw yourself into it and have a go at it?
Well, I think there's a place for both. I mean, I think some people, it depends. Like you say, podcasts are a weird thing. There's some people who, when they listen to podcasts, they're expecting basically something that's like a highly produced radio play. And the thing is, like someone like the BBC, they moved into it very, very quickly, and so they ruined it by making everyone's expectations of podcasts extremely high, because they have full public funded production teams, hundreds of people working on these. I think there's a mix of both. I think there you have things that need to give information, and need to be things that are well produced, well researched, and you want that. And especially when it comes to like the fictional ones and the crime podcasts and all of that, the kind of the detail that they go into is insane. But on the other side, there is that element of authenticity as well. There is that whole thing of someone just it's so easy to record someone just picking up a phone and recording into it their thoughts, where they are at the moment, what they're doing, what's happening in their life. I mean, the thing is, I think, so many people, like loads of people, like I know work-wise and things like that, go, oh, can I join the group? Should I listen to the podcast? I'm like, no, I don't think it's right for you. And they think I'm using like some clever reverse psychology thing. I'm like, no, but I honestly genuinely don't think it's right for you, because you're interested in running. And if like you'll listen to it because you want to know about running, you're not really going to. You're going to find out more about us than you probably want to. And if you're not really interested in that, you're not going to like it. And running is a very loose thread through. If we talk about the thousands and thousands of hours of content we've produced, outside of, say, the interviews, the amount of running in that is quite minimal. But the thing I think that really, the reason I like talking to David is that he's my friend, and I like talking to him, and I speak to him, outside of like my family. He's the person I speak to most of all, in the whole world. And we always have something to talk about, because you do always have something to talk about your friends, and it's not always on the same subject. We are not single subject human beings. We are, like David, we will talk some things about running, we'll talk that, and then he'll talk about how he had to do a sperm sample at last. I was at a hospital. You're like, that would never get onto a running podcast under any circumstances, but it adds a certain color to it that you kind of don't know. And David's very unpredictable in terms of what the things he'll say. The amount of in the early days, we tried to produce the podcast a little bit more than we did, like taking out all the ums and ahs and all that kind of stuff. Well, we certainly, like producer Eddie, certainly had to work hard to take out all the litigious stuff that David was saying. Which seems that some of the older episodes don't make any sense because so much was taken out. But when we listened back to them, but we had some feedback as well that people just preferred it when it wasn't like overly produced. It felt like it felt like more of a conversation. And I am by no means a presenter in any way, or I can barely, writing is my thing. I can barely like string a sentence together, and when I do, it's normally a sentence that goes on for about half an hour. David is a good presenter. David does this, as a kind of his presenting is a part-time job as well. So some people don't like that, but then some people see that as, that's just how some people speak. And so I don't know, it's one of those things where it's either you find it endearing and you listen to it and it resonates with you because either you sound like people they know, or it sounds more authentic because we are two, genuinely, we're genuine friends, or you don't like it. And if you don't like it, then you really, really don't like it, which is fine.
So speaking about the group then, and I mean, it's obviously the joke, isn't it, that people put on, whenever the podcast is mentioned, someone always comments, there's a podcast, because the group is it's a force to be reckoned with, isn't it? It's up to like 4,000 people, and I think I've been on there for years and years and years. I've not always like very often put anything on there. I'll occasionally put something on there and have a look at it, but I know there's people that sort of live and die for the Facebook group, isn't there?
And that's the thing, there's a podcast thing does actually have a basis in fact of a real situation where when I did Winter Nuts as a challenge, of course, which I didn't fail. I just like to point that out that someone timed me out early in the end. But there was one of the guys, Dougal. We were talking about the group and everything, and he genuinely thought that the Bad Boy Running like Facebook group was it, and he was just like, "There's a podcast," and so it's come from that. It's come from that. Like everyone's just going, "There's podcast," and because the thing is, it's that type of we attract that type of person who will listen to the podcast, but then they won't like to admit that they've listened to the podcast as well, because it shows that they're too keen, and no one wants to be seen as too keen in that group. And that's why people say, but people are absolutely desperate when we see them to tell us that they've not listened to the podcast recently. It's like almost a badge. Oh, I have no idea what's going on. I've not listened to the podcast. So like, okay, you don't have to listen to the podcast. It's like, it's up to you. That's fine. I don't know. It's like, it's one of the, I think the group is one of those things where people like being part of it, but also it feels kind of a little bit dirty as well. That, you know, because there was that point where at the start we hadn't made the group private. It was still a public group, I think, and so people were going, oh, like my friends can see what I've written here, or like my, you know, people I work with can see what I've written in here and stuff. I'm like, yeah, they can. Like, oh, okay. But yeah, the group has completely organically, you know, there's bigger groups out there. Yeah, see some of those running groups have got like 10, 20, 30,000 people in them, but we've never you know, we've never, you know, tried to do any kind of recruitment to the group or invited them. Everyone that's come to that group has come through someone else recommending it, which I think is one of the reasons why it works so well, and it's not unreal. And also, you know, I think the big issue with that is that, especially, you know, one of the side effects of having the word like bad boy running, and the fact that it's two males presenting it, is that sometimes it can attract a certain type of person who, you know, may be aggressive about cyclists, who may be you know, slightly more right wing in their tendencies, I would say, but you know, that the group seems to, you know, make sure that doesn't happen, that, you know, things are clamped down on very, very quickly and stuff like that. So you know, in a sense, we've been really lucky in that, you know, that all the different like lieutenants, as we call them in the group, who are kind of looking after it and you know, keep it in the spirit that we want to keep it. But actually, you know, it's quite a light touch group. You know, there's not, people know when they're coming in what they're expecting. They, you know, if they've not listened to the podcast, we kind of don't let them in. You know, don't recommend they go in, because there's just not like, yeah, this, what's the point? Like, it's like, just, you're not going to like it if you're not listening to the podcast. What do you think you're going to gain from this group? Honestly,
I think the first episode I ever listened to was the one where you did the DNA test thing.
Yeah, the DNA fit ones. Yeah,
that was it. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the company, but I was just I was on a ferry over to Ireland, and I was like just searching for podcasts to listen to, and I've been listening to all the other podcasts and everything, and I was like, oh, Bad Boy Running. Let's you know, I've got a bit of time. Let's have a look. Just look at the latest episode. So put that on, and I was just like, I was just confused to begin with. I didn't really understand what was going on. I think you began by talking about David was talking about how he'd been on a train journey and how he'd had a load of beer and stuff on this train journey, because it was a long journey and everything, to go and check out this factory. Which obviously I found out later was to do with Caffeine Bullet and everything. But at the time, like, what's he going to a factory for? To go and check out some products? I ain't got a clue. And then the next part of the episode was you basically laying into each other about the types of foods that you can eat, and how David found it hilarious that you were genetically predisposed to be able to eat burnt meat, even though you were.
Yes, it's my superpower that I will never use.
And I just it was just, I was like, it just doesn't make any sense, but I kind of like it. This is I think this is my kind of thing. And then obviously found my way to the Facebook group, and I think at the time I don't think I was even using Facebook, but I was like, oh well, I'll have to kind of go back onto Facebook again if I'm gonna have a look at this group. And so Bad Boy Runnings to answer for me going back on Facebook, which I thought I'd got rid of years ago.
We pulled you. We did Mark's work, Zuckerberg's work, and we pulled you back onto the platform. The thing is, that's one of the reasons why we even came up with the A to Z, because even after like 10 episodes, people had no idea what was going on. Like the extent to which it all got kind of in jokey got ridiculous after a while, because just people kept coming up with stuff, and it was funny, and so you just kind of develop this kind of language around it. But you have to. fortunately, it is that kind of thing where, you know, as long as the tone feels right, you can kind of get on board, even if you don't 100% know what's going on. It's like, you know, trying to watch a Marvel movie, you know, without watching the, you know, the full, you know, 23 and, you know, the first 3 phases or whatever. You can still the tone's right. It feels like it feels like the kind of movie I like. I don't know what happened before. I don't know what's going to happen after, but I generally know that I might want to invest a bit more time in this. But yeah, like having to, I don't even think, you know, if you went back to the start and you listened the whole way through, it would still make a huge amount of sense and stuff, because we had a period where some of the episodes kind of got mixed up and things got, so there is an investment in time, and that's the thing, you know, we created that A to Z in order to help people understand it, understand, you know, the language that's being used and things like that. And they're a funny little story. Well, I think they're funny little stories. They're stories on their own that you know that around different things that people said. But then when we recorded it, it was 6 hours. So, you know, it was just like, what we created this abridged guide for you to help understand. You've only got to spend 6 hours listening to it in order to understand it. I mean, and it's that kind of barrier, I think, you know, that if you put that in front of people, it really does show their commitment. Like there were people who go, oh yeah, I listened to the you know, the A to Z, and you're like, why bother? Like, why did you do that? But you just you I don't know, some reason you're drawn into stuff, and you end up listening to it and watching it, and you know, yeah, it's
I did. I genuinely went back and listened, because once I heard that episode, I was like, right, I'll go and listen to all the other episodes that were on there, and I was like, oh, the A to Z, I'll go through that. And I just spent, because like, you know, for my day job, like driving a lot to site and stuff, I just spent hours just with it on in the background. I probably wasn't listening to it fully, but I think I was one of the few that went through the full 6 hours. And also the Christmas specials.
Oh my god,
still do Christmas specials?
Oh, that Christmas special is one of those things where we started doing it. I mean, if you were there when we originally did the specials, you'll know that we did like the first 8 and gave up, and then we didn't record the rest of them until February, because we just think we had to complete them, because it was just they were so badly received. And there was so much more effort to do, because we had to come up with a song with each one. And so we didn't release fully the last, say, 4 up until February the following year. So it was it doesn't look like that now. We've kind of changed history to make it look like they were all recorded together. But it was like, the thing is, it's really obvious, I think, when and so it should be, when either we are speaking about stuff that we know nothing about, when we're speaking about stuff that we're really excited about and enthused about, when we're speaking to people who maybe aren't as interesting as we thought they were going to be, or people that are completely different way. I think just you kind of pick up on that. You pick up on the presenter's enthusiasm, stuff like that, and there's nothing worse than hearing people trying to fake it and trying to be enthusiastic about stuff that they're not enthusiastic about. So yeah, and that's partly one of the reasons why we've struggled to get sponsors. So no, we haven't struggled to get sponsors. We just haven't really tried. That's the thing. So.
Brilliant. So one of the things about the group is that it's basically spread worldwide, and you commented on this, and I know in my podcast I've talked about this too much because I had a recent experience of going to Western States to be part of the media team, and I was on one of the follow cams running in from Roby Point, the last checkpoint, right down to the finish.
Nice. Okay.
And so I got to see like I ended up running like 38 miles over the course of that time, like over 2 shifts, just literally running backwards and forwards, filming people and everything. And so it got to sort of like, it was getting towards golden hour. It wasn't golden hour, but it was probably like an hour before golden hour. And the people were coming through so thick and fast that we didn't have time to get off the track and get back up the road, back up towards Roby Point. People were coming through so fast, one after another, that we were literally following them around the track to the finish. running out the side of the finish line and running straight across the track to the corner where everyone came in and following him through. So I was like very tired, been awake for a minute and really, really hot. And then someone comes running through wearing a red t-shirt. And I'm like, is that a Bad Boy Running t-shirt? And it was Dave Stewart. Yeah, so
amazing.
gave him an FYB, and then we had a quick chat and followed him down the track and had a good chat with him. And it's like instantly, like you've got that connection straight away.
Yeah.
And I think you've got that because he'd already commented, Antti, about the fact that he'd seen like Scott Jurek on the course, and he'd seen like Camille Herron the day before and everything.
Yeah.
And they knew who he was because of Bad Boy Running.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. The stuff. I mean, that's the thing. I think that makes it really special. Like when it goes out into the community, and when people first buy the merch, and then they go out and they go for a run and they don't get FYB'd, like they're genuinely disappointed. They're genuinely like they're expecting to for someone to to shout something at them or connect with them in some way. But it's really interesting. Like it's weird seeing stuff that you've like produced, your like brand as it were, on other people who you don't know, who are nothing to do with you, who are meeting up with each other simply because they've just listened to a podcast that you've listened to podcasts that you've done. It's just, it's kind of a weird, magical, surreal kind of thing as well. But it's really powerful. And and even things like race directors who they kind of like buy into it. They listen to the podcast and stuff like that. If you're wearing a BBR top and you finish the race, they won't time you out until you've done your press ups. And so it's like you're carrying this kind of law on with it, of ways of behaving and ways of acting that other people connect with. And I do think I don't know enough about like the running community wider, not having been really kind of part of it, to know how common that is, and know whether there are I think some of the crews in London are a bit like that. Very kind of but you got to be beautiful to be part of them, haven't you? They vet you, they vet all your social media and stuff like that. I'm not sure if they vetted some of the do-badders, they wouldn't be allowed in. But yeah, there's, I mean, it's that community thing. It's like it's seeing someone who connects with something you connect with and having that thing in common. I just don't know what I don't know what they talk about. This is the thing. I don't really. It's the whole thing is very odd in the sense that I know why I do the podcast, and that's to speak to David, and it's fun like stuff like that. I'm still not 100% sure why other people listen to it. I mean, I know I can rationalize it and stuff like that, but it's it is, there's still like a part of me that just thinks why are you listening to us? Why are and I don't know really what that is. I don't know whether that's something in me that thinks I don't have anything to say, or because I really don't have anything to say. I mean, like I don't have any information to give about running or anything, which is quite incredible considering I used to be a journalist in running as well. But people find, so what people are finding is they're not finding something valuable in the content, obviously, but they're finding something valuable elsewhere, something about acceptance or they're finding, or it's just simply it's entertaining. Like God, like a running podcast that's entertaining. It feels there's so few of them. I've tried listening to other running podcasts, and I was just like, they're talking about running. There's no way I'm going to stick with this. So it gives something, and it's just nice seeing other people. It's weird when I'm out and I'm either with my family or I'm with like friends from school or stuff like that, and then someone will come up to me and say, "Oh, you Jodie from Bad Boy Running," and and have a chat with me and stuff like that, and and then people like mercilessly rib me after that because they're just thinking that I've just set that up or something like that. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it's always in a really odd situation and stuff like that. which is a bit unusual. But yeah, it's good that like it's created a community that that people get so much out of. Really, that they can take from it, and they find connection with other people who they wouldn't otherwise even necessarily speak to. Because at least you're all kind of on the same level. You could probably go for a beer with them. You probably know that you could have a joke with them, which I don't think you'd be able to necessarily do with certain members of running clubs, for example.
That's true. Yeah, that's the 100% true. Yeah, because you get to a running club and you've got the fast guys, you've got the slow people. Everyone feels a little bit like you even get put into separate like speed groups, don't you? So it's you're segregated. But I think probably the thing with ultras is that you'll know this, that when you first start doing ultras, it's a bit apprehensive. You go and do your first ultra and you end up running with someone who by the end of the race is like your best friend.
Exactly.
Everything about them. You've seen them go to the toilet multiple times, like behind trees. You've got that weird connection to them, and I think that's the kind of community that the Bad Boy Running has probably got, is that ability to go and meet a stranger, talk to them, have the thing in common, which is running. Then by any means, then not the fastest runners, not the slowest runners, but if you're mid-packing, you can have a conversation, you can talk to someone. But the guys at the front that are winning the races, they're not having conversations with people and finding out about how many kids they've got and what dog they've got and all that kind of stuff. It's something completely different. I think it's the overspill from that community of making a friend when you're running an ultra is the same as Bad Boy Running, that everyone's kind of in the same boat, and we're all a bit weird, we're all a bit quirky, but it's the community.
And the thing is, whenever I say this, I sound like a right twat. But in the earlier days of ultras, there weren't even like cutoffs and stuff in some of the races we went to. Like there certainly weren't people who would like racing it hard to win it, and even if they did win it, it didn't really mean anything. It was like like three mums running it. You were just having a really nice like 3-day thing together. It was like when I did the Forces March, it was just a bunch of people who just wanted to kind of like test themselves, see whether they could do it over 3 days. You're kind of interested. There wasn't any, the whole idea of like this competitiveness in ultras is I don't know what it's a relatively new thing, but it feels relatively new in the sense that now when you run ultras and stuff like that, people were just like, oh yeah, who won it, all this kind of stuff, and it didn't used to be like that, and it was more of that. It was more of the having those conversations on the thing, meeting people. The thing that I was hired to do essentially when I was a journalist was I wasn't there to write race reports. I wasn't there to say this is what a race is like, this is how I finished it. The things that made the stuff interesting that I wrote, they were more like travelogues and travel pieces are more about what are the stories along that race that are there to tell. It's about like the people you meet. It's about like the reader is not interested in what your time is. I mean, people talking about what their times are, stuff like that. No one cares. Like really, no one cares what your time is. But if you're talking about a race, people want to know like what sort of people are at the race. Like what kind of vibe is it? What kind of is it a fast race? Is it there's so much more color to doing a race, doing an event, running an ultra than the distance or the speed. Like so you have this real mix of people, and I think it's anyone that's like a little bit more curious about that and much more interested in the people on a race rather than seeing them as individual competitors. I think that's what it appeals to, and I think we bring that out a lot more in terms of the way that we do the interviews and the people that we speak to as well, because I think there's loads of, I mean, you must get the same. You must get loads of people go, oh, I've done this, we just loads of requests saying I've done this race and I want to come on and talk about it, or I've done this ultra, I want to talk about it. You're just like, what? Like a million people have done that now, like doing I'm going to do 5,000 marathons in 5,000 days, and you're just kind of, oh god, it's just like it's a bit it's kind of a bit boring now. But they were like, oh, we know there's a dude who used to be a sniper in Afghanistan. Let's get him on. Yeah, let's talk to him about that. And you're just like, it's just much more interesting. There's much more vibrancy around it, even just finding out other stories. I mean, I went to we had an event at a BBRC event, which was a Weatherspoons thing. And even just sitting there and talking to the other like do badders and stuff, like the things that people do, the jobs that people have are so interesting. Like what other, the things that you just find out from each other, which, you just wouldn't ever sit down with that group of people in any other situation unless you're just all wearing the same t-shirt and you listen to the same like podcast. It's so ridiculous. It's like, and I think the other thing is, and this is something that someone said to me really early on, is that there's a lot of people who are kind of slightly older, and this is particularly true when you have children, is all of a sudden you're like, I don't know if it's the same for women, but certainly for men, and I can only really speak from middle-aged male perspective here, but your circle of friends kind of just reduces. Like all of a sudden, like the only people that you're really hanging out with is when there's like a dad's night out, and that happens so rarely, or then you're just like, well, this is a bit, and occasionally you'll go and see some friends from school, or occasionally you do that, but you've got your work colleagues and things like that. But your circle of friends is kind of who you really have something in common with, really diminishes. And all of a sudden, and a lot of people said this when the kind of community was there, that all of a sudden, like they were making new friends, like in their like late 30s and 40s. And it was just weird. It's like, what? I'm meeting people I don't know before. I'm going to a pub with people who I've never met before, and I think and then telling their partners, and their partners like, what you must be having some kind of affair, or like, what the hell is this? Like you're not supposed to make friends in your 40s. What? But and then you'd be in a pub full of people who literally never met each other, and all they've got in common is this one thing, and everyone really gets on beautifully. And so there's a lot of really empowering things about it, which are really happy side effects of just literally sitting down and recording a podcast.
Brilliant. I think to call it a cult is correct, isn't it? That's definitely the right terminology for it, which obviously that segues nice into my next section, which I've just remembered out of my questions to talk about the book. So I got in touch with you shortly after, because I've listened to the podcast for years, and I saw that you brought the book out, and I was like, this is, I'm not really, don't really think I've got a brand that I need help with marketing, but I'm going to read it anyway, and I read it. But the bit of a backstory to how I got the book. So I ordered the book from, I think I ordered it off Amazon. I can't remember which way I ordered it anyway. But anyway, it turned up at the house, and my daughters, I've got two daughters, one is 10, one is 12, and nothing gets into the house without them opening it. So doesn't matter what it is, they're not interested in who it's addressed to. They'll just get it and they'll open it to see what's in there, because they want to see if it's something for them or not.
It's the same here. No, exactly what you mean. It's like
so the book turned up, packaged up, and I'm like, oh, something from Amazon. Let's have a look, see what's in there. So they ripped it open, and obviously found this book that's entitled "How to Start a Cult." So they then were like, oh, I'll go and ask Mummy about this. So Mummy was outside. So where we are, my wife's a hairdresser, and I've converted some our old outbuildings, like brick sheds, converted it into a salon. So she's got her own salon out there. So
nice.
So she's got people in there. So she's got a customer who is doing the hair. So my oldest daughter walks in with your book and goes, "Mummy, Daddy's book has turned up." And she was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. What is it?" "It's called How to Start a Cult." And my wife says that a client just kind of like looked at her like, what? what is your husband all about? And so my wife, who's she's bless her, she's used to this kind of stuff, just said, it'll be something to do with his running. Yeah, don't worry about it, and take it back inside.
What I like about that is it's the resignation there, that it's something to do. Like, she knew what it was about. She knew what it's about. The amount of like annoyed partners that we have to deal with, who are just like, oh, having to listen to your shit in the car sometimes, and it's just it is unbelievable.
So so anyway, yeah. So I got the book, and I read through it and everything, and yeah, it's I like the way that you know, the same with the podcast and same with the Facebook group. You're almost like putting people off, like at certain points in the book. You're like, if you've got to this point and you're not willing to do this book isn't for you. And then they're like, further on in the book, there's other bits where it's like, by now, if you're still reading this book, there's something wrong with you, or you are about to commit to this. And all the way through, there's these like get off points. Is this kind of like, obviously you designed the book in that way. Is that something that you know, from a brand kind of, from a marketing side of thing, is this something that you've used before in marketing? Is this like a tried and tested thing that you know how to do?
Well, the thing, to be fair, like it's really important, like from because I obviously am marketing strategy. That's kind of like what I do. But everyone talks about attraction and attracting people and getting people into a community and doing that kind of thing. But what people don't talk about is also repelling the wrong people. And that's just as important, and that's particularly important. And it wasn't really until Bad Boy Running came around and the community, and like looking back at it, that it kind of really hit home how powerful that was, how powerful making sure that you are always qualifying out the wrong type of people. You're always making sure that that people who are unlikely to really connect with you are, should. Sorry, I've got a weird noise that's coming. I don't know what. Did you hear that?
Is that from me? I'm trying.
I think so.
Because I've gone onto my phone. Just see if it'll. Is it the phone? Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I heard something. It wasn't me. I just heard another voice in the background. So are you licking that and putting that in? It's like
I am. My tried and tested way to get my phone to charge. It's a technique I've perfected over the years. Right, I'm charging. It's okay. Okay, I'm back.
Cool. I can't remember what I was saying.
I tried and tested repelling people.
Yeah, no, it wasn't until seeing it in action in the community that it kind of really hit home how powerful that was. And so it's something that I've constantly talked about in terms of like communities, and when you certainly building an audience, you just want to be really, really clear about who you want in your audience, and really, really clear about who you want to follow you, and who it's right for. And the thing is, no one ever likes saying to people, this isn't for you, or no, or you can't join, or you're not right, because everyone wants to be so accommodating and welcoming and inclusive. But the problem is that and you can be inclusive. You can be inclusive like by choosing people, by letting anyone in. But the thing that excludes you is your attitude. And so and it's really important for the people in the community who join that, who are the right people, to see that the wrong people are either not being allowed to join, or they're being expelled and removed if it's not appropriate. And that's really important. And really important to defend them. We had really early on in the community, we had a couple of race directors, one in particular who I won't name, who came in and started having a go at people in the group, and because I think a lot of the BBR people at his races and stuff were quite were I don't think they were doing anything wrong, but I don't think he kind of liked it. He didn't like the press ups thing and stuff like that, and so he was very boisterous, trying to say how it was, telling everyone that that people are being immature and stuff like that. And when that happens, most people will just expel them and and say, oh, I don't think this is right for you, and let them leave and stuff like that. But in those situations, you have to go as kind of the leader of the group or whatever. You've got to go hard in on them. You've got to go hard in on them and go, look, you're not welcome here because of this. You're wrong because of this. You have to really defend the people in it. And it's so few times people defend their audience. People like stand up for their audience, and it's the act of standing up for them and defending them and and drawing a line in the sand, that actually that's what makes people like really connect with you and make think, oh, you actually care about us, you actually it helps them define what you stand for against what other people stand for. And so few communities do that. So few, people make it like, I always use this example, but it's like trying to join a paid community or join a membership organization, stuff like that. Really easy to take your money, really hard to leave. It should be the other way around. It should be really hard to join. And that's the thing, putting obstacles in the way. If you want to join, you have to jump through some hoops. You have to listen to 6 hours of terrible A to Z in order to do that. You have to prove that you really want to be part of this. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But this is not going to work for you if you don't commit to those basic things. It's the thing that we talk about Project Mayhem in Fight Club. It's the exact same thing. It's just getting all those micro commitments from people to do stuff, while also just telling other people to bugger off if they don't like it. And it's the same, isn't it? Same when it comes to criticism. The thing that we did really early on is when we got 1-star reviews, we kind of held them up as like, people hate us. People really, really didn't like us. And I got that. I didn't pioneer that, of course. But I got that from in the, I think it was the early 90s with a TV show called Kids in the Hall. And Kids in the Hall was, it was a really kind of polarizing like comedy sketch show. And it was quite surreal as well. And so you can see why it wasn't popular. But the way they advertised it is they just put all the criticism of it and say the worst comedy show of all time. And I just thought, that's brilliant. And it made you want to watch it. And it'll put some people off, and they'll be right, and make you want to watch it. And so it's that intrigue as to why are they saying such negative things about it, but also why are they advertising the negative things they're saying about it as well. And then that also helped the people in the community, because they absolutely love that. They love the fact that people, you don't care if people don't like you. You don't want to be liked by everyone. You don't have to be popular with everyone. And I think that's the thing. All those things strengthen the community and strengthen the connection that people have with it as well. So yeah, that's why it comes across as a cult.
So what brands do you think are out there, like in the running space, that you think have got it right, of who kind of, not necessarily a cult, but as from your point of view as working in marketing, who has got it right?
I think one of the strongest brands out there is White Star Running, their race brand. They have absolutely everything that you would expect. Their races are kind of renowned for having a certain style. They've got a really good leader in Andy Palmer. He really understands stuff. They have some brilliant like merch designs. Spends huge amount of money on getting the craziest like bling that you can take with you. But there's just a certain vibe to their events, and a certain vibe to what they do that means that people just think about those races in a different way to other races, and much more kind of inclusive in a certain way, completely different tone, and just really good at like building communities, building up. And I think that's probably one of the strongest in the running space. I mean, there are, if I was a race company, I'd be looking at that model and thinking, how do we actually build that community? Because it was those communities that succeeded when lockdown came around, because people bought into a race for more than just actually doing the race. They bought in it for the community. It's much easier to then run virtual events around it, isn't it? Because you have that connection and everything. So I think there's a lot of events that don't. A lot of races that don't have that. In terms of brands, brands are pathetic. Just like brands are generally pathetic. They don't ever stand for any. They kind of stand for stuff on an out an outward level. It's like with Nike and the Colin Kaepernick thing. You think, oh, they're making a stand there, but on the other hand, then they're taking contracts away from like pregnant athletes. You're just like, well, there's such a it's so incongruent. Yeah, there's no real authenticity to it. You're kind of like, and I think, yeah, there are. I can't think of any brands that that do that really well. It's mainly kind of races, and but I think there's an opportunity there. There's much more opportunity for communities to kind of have more of a sort of a cult element to it, because people need that. People really want to be part of something, and they want to feel part of something, and they can't always get to races. It's more expensive now to get to races. People are going to have to think up something else, because races are really struggling because of cost of living, lack of volunteers, everything else as well. So actually building a community that's strong enough to weather that kind of thing, where you can sell the, I mean, our merch is terrible, but sell them things that make them feel part of something. Help start up community events, virtual events that make them feel part of something. Do stuff that just makes everyone feel that sense of belonging. I think there's a real opportunity. But yeah, White Star I think is probably the best example of that that I've seen, and I have personally experienced as well.
Yeah, they also have beer at their races as well, don't they?
A cider frolic, and yeah, and there's a theme to what I enjoy about certain races.
I remember having there's a local ultra that goes around Derby called the Nomad 50, and I've done it a few times, and I just thought it was normal to just get a beer halfway round the route, going into the pub that was the pub was a checkpoint, so the car park of the pub was a checkpoint. And I thought, well, I'm at the pub, why am I not going to get so I got a pint of lager top, because I thought, I don't want a full pint of lager. A lager top, well, a bit of sugar in there as well will do me. And I stood there and drank it, and just got the funniest looks from the checkpoint people and of the racers. And I'd been listening to your interviews with Camille Herron, where she talked about how she'd had a beer to settle her stomach, and I was like, oh well, obviously, I'm feeling a bit nauseous, I'll have a beer. That'll set on my stomach. So I had this pint of lager top, and I felt great. I felt brilliant. Up the next climb, but 10 minutes later, spewing.
Oh really?
And spewed all the way to the end of the race, but
Brilliant. Well, the thing is, it was good. It probably made a great photo at that moment, and that's all that matters. You got three things out of it. One, you got acknowledgement from people that this is unusual. Two, you got a great photo of you with the beer, and then three, you got a great story about how it all went wrong. So to me, that is a win in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I wanted to talk to you about is just your own running. How's running going for you? Because I never know. Sometimes you'll talk on the podcast about how you've been running, and then other times you'll say not running, and David will say the same thing. What's happening with your running at the moment?
So I had as you all know, I had a challenge that I was supposed to be doing, which was preparing for the to run an Ironman. And I was training for that. My preparation, I start from a very, very far back point, in the sense that I can ride a bike, but I can't ride it for long. So a completely different set of muscles, it turns out. And also I can't, I don't know how to do front crawl. I never learnt that. I was off that week when we learnt it, and so I don't know how to do that. And so I was coming from a point, actually there's quite a lot I had to learn in the first part in order to get there. And so I started doing it, and then partly through lockdown, obviously everyone kind of was running through lockdown, trying to get out, running as much as they could. Probably the most amount of running I'd done since when I was working for Men's Running, and I had to run for a living. And so I do quite a lot. And then I got COVID, and it basically knocked me out for like 2 weeks. I got to a point where I was probably doing about 30 or 40 miles a week, sort of consistently coming back into it and everything. Probably not doing it every single day, but certainly you know, that feeling of, you know, when you haven't done it in a while, just you start getting it back, start getting some of the speed back, and it all starts to feel nicer. And then I got COVID, which totally wiped me out. And yeah, because I was supposed to be doing Run Brit, the following June. I was signed up to it, supposed to be doing it. So I was obviously trying to, you know, get ready to prepare for that. But then, yeah, when I got that in December, it was just, and then I booked that, and then I booked to do the Ironman like a month after. But then when the COVID thing has, it just scuppered everything. I mean, I couldn't breathe properly. I couldn't do anything. It even felt different if I tried to run as well. Like sometimes, you know, you can run, you can try and go hard, and you know what it feels like if you've run enough when you're going hard, and it's just, you know, your lungs are getting back into feeling that way and everything. And with this, it just felt totally different. It felt like something else, like something that you can do. And so I've kind of slowly been trying to get back to some element of fitness that I was at before. The difficulty is the motivation around it. I went out a couple of months ago to the gym to think, okay, I'm going to try and do a 5k now, and see how quickly I can do a 5k. When we did the National Run Show South, David and I went to do the park run together, and it was cancelled. So we went round it, and he was shocked by how much I couldn't run. I think he was genuinely shocked. He knew that, you know, I don't run much as it is, you know, but I think he was genuinely shocked. Like I ran 100 meters, and I'm like, I've got to stop now. It was that bad. So I got on the treadmill to try and run it, and it took me 42 minutes to run a 5k, which is insane. And I was like destroyed after it. And that's double my best, which is kind of insane. And so it kind of just shows how far it's gone back. I am getting out. I'm running on a regular basis, and go to the gym and everything else. So I play down how much I do actual running. Of course, I'm not on Strava or anything, so no one can actually track me. But yeah, I have to. The thing is, I have to. Right, like I've got. if you listen to the podcast, you'll know that I suffered gout inexplicably for a vegan, and so as part of that, I have to essentially do around a half an hour's exercise a day, in order to make sure that that kind of doesn't happen again. To make sure that, you know, my circulation is good, that I don't, you know, we don't really understand what happened with it. But yeah, I kind of have to do that. I have to do that in order to keep things ticking over. But at the moment, it just looks as though kind of like big races and stuff like that. I've always had this ability that no matter how unfit I am or how overweight I am or whatever, I can still just go out and do stuff. Like, you know, we did one of the White Star races, the Ox, and that was, you know, I hadn't done any training, and I was going to do a, you know, marathon, 10k, 50 miler, and a half marathon, you know, over the space of 3 days and stuff like that. And I did it absolutely fine. It was quite painful and stuff like that, you know, had all sorts of issues in the feet and everything like that. But I can do it. Mentally, I know I can do it. Physically, I still have the ability to do that, even if it's not particularly quick. It's just add in the COVID thing with the ability to not being able to breathe, and it's just, you know, it's probably the biggest like setback that, yeah, I've ever had in terms of an injury and stuff. So that's the thing we're dealing with.
COVID's I know that I've had it twice now. So I had it like at the start of this year, and then I had it again a few weeks ago, and it was different both times. So the first time,
really,
yeah, the first time it felt like, you know, my lungs, and it did take a few weeks for my lungs to feel normal again afterwards. The first time, but then this time it was nothing in my lungs at all. It was purely in my head, as far as like a headache constantly all the time, and then like bunged up and everything, so I could still breathe, but like snotty and everything. And then the weirdest thing was that I've been suffering like off and on for years with a mild case of runner's knee. So it's kind of thing that I can work on, and it goes away, and then it comes back, rears its head again, and I have to do a load of strength work, and I can keep it at bay. But this time, as soon as I got COVID, within a couple of days, it felt like literally like someone had like stuck a knife in the side of my kneecap. Yeah, it's the weirdest thing that I was like struggling just to walk on it and come down the stairs. And I just thought, how have I gone from feeling like my knee is good enough to be running sort of like 50 plus mile weeks, 50, 60 mile weeks. And then instantly I feel like I literally couldn't run a mile. And it's starting to go now. So like 2 weeks, second week away from it now. And it's starting to feel like it's going away. But I think it seems to be like it zeroes in on your weak spot and just like attacks that weak spot.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like anyway. So I don't know whether have you sort of figured out what you're going to do about the whole lung thing.
Well, the funny thing is, like when I had it, I didn't have an issue with breathing. I didn't have an issue. There was nothing wrong with my lungs. I was just in pain in bed for 2 weeks. So I obviously didn't go out for a run for a good, until probably after Christmas as a result of it. And it was only, and I didn't feel as though there's anything. It was as soon as I started running, that's when I started feeling it. Like I had no idea that I was affected in any way by it until I actually started running, for like a sort of consistent, over 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah, it didn't feel as though it was, that was going to be the result of having had it. So a great thing about having a podcast that lots of people listen to is that people give you loads of advice. And so one of the things that someone was suggesting is that you don't go out running. What you need to do is you focus on breathing exercises. You need to really kind of focus on like just doing sort of deep breathing, sort of really mindfulness breathing and stuff like that. Which and that absolutely has worked. It hasn't necessarily cleared it and stuff like that. I don't do anywhere near enough like breathing exercises. If I did, I'd probably get back. But I think that's one thing that has helped more than anything else, to try and get back to that element of having some kind of aerobic fitness. Because at the moment I mean, if let's think when I went out for the last run, I can't run for more than say 15 minutes at a time, which is just fine. It takes me ages to get back. It takes me ages to get back. I don't have anything. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and even if I did, I'd probably slightly fail it, and it would just become another thing for everyone to rip out of me. So,
so if you get yourself back to running form again, what have you got any races that you would love to do? Is anything on your race bucket list that you've thought that ultimately you want to do?
I have a little like list in my head of things that I do want to do. One race I really want to do is the Grand to Grand Canyon race. Like that's just, I really want to do that because I just think that's gonna be beautiful. There's kind of quite a few races that I want to do, but they're mainly because of where they are, not because of like the race itself. I know loads of people go, oh, I'd like to do Barkley and stuff like that. It's like, why would you ever want to do that race? That race is like it's horrific. like just the idea of doing it sounds awful. I have no desire to do, like, people are just like, oh yeah, we should do Big's Backyard Ultra. I have no desire to do that. To me, that's the worst thing in the world. I like going to places and going on routes and seeing stuff and enjoy, like the Transalpine was a stunning race. That was on my bucket list, and then when the opportunity came up to run it with men's running, it was insane. It was like eight days across the Alps, like going from Germany to Italy through the most stunning locations. Like you wouldn't be able to kind of like travel that on it in a car or anything else like that. It's just, and it's mind blowing, the distances you're traveling and the heights you're going and stuff like that. So I'm more interested in races that give me a kind of an experience rather than ones that kind of say. But then I have kind of played them down a little bit because my sights have been lowered somewhat because of COVID as well. I do want to finish an Ironman. I do want to obviously I have a load of time goals I want to do though. I do want to get under 20 minutes on a 5k. I do want to go under 4 hours on a marathon, which I could have, if I'd have done that at my fittest, I could have easily done that. But I wasn't training for a marathon, so why would I bother running marathons? There's a kind of, I've got this book called Extreme Running, which I basically, that was the thing. I think it was like the second running book I bought, and I was just like, I want to do that one, I want to do that one, I want to do that one, I want to do that one. Half of the races aren't there, don't exist anymore, because they for reasons that they can't do, they haven't got the things. Something about Badwater really, really appeals to me, and I don't know why. Heat is something I think I just like. Of all the races, I don't know why Badwater just keeps coming back to me as something, because I just don't get it. I don't understand. I'm like, why am I thinking about that race so much?
It's because the way he describes it.
Oh, it's just it's the way that something gets into you, and you're just like, yeah, I want to do that. I will do like Run Britannia at some point as well, because that's something I want to do. Run across UK, and I quite like the way that they've done it as well, in the sense that you're not running on all those awful roads in order to do a time thing. I read the I keep forgetting his name. Want to cycle around the world. What's his name? His book's up here somewhere.
Sean.
Yeah.
The ginger guy.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I can't remember his name. It's like
not Sean something, is it? Sean. No.
Hey, well, I've got his book here. Oh, here we go. Oh, his book's just here. Sean Conway. Yeah, Sean Conway. Here, promoting his book here. Like, just got there. Sean Conway. Yeah, the way that I've read quite a few books from runners who've run through the UK, but they've done it in lots of different ways. And I like the way that he did it. He was just much more kind of intuitive. It's just like, rather than go on this awful road, I'm going to run down these country lanes instead, and I'm going to do this way and stuff like that. It was a really nice way of I think seeing the UK. So yeah, it's that kind of stuff that interests me more. I'm not so like, I don't really care about like those kind of like distances, like times or distances. It's more about what the kind of experiences are around the race, which I've always found more interesting. And now I've got a family as well. It'd be good to pick things that once we're there we can do stuff. I don't think go and say, all right, we're gonna go to Tennessee, and we're going to do the Barkley marathons, and then we'll have a nice holiday after that. It's just it's not a good sell, is it?
You're going to have a camping holiday in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in these drizzly, miserable woods that look like someone's about to be murdered in them any time. Enjoy.
Yeah, it's different as we get older, isn't it? And we've got kids and they're growing up. Priorities do change a lot, don't they?
Yeah, like the whole idea of doing back-to-back 25 milers on a weekend, I mean I wouldn't be able to get away with it. That's what I say to it. I wouldn't be able to get away with it, but I'm like secretly glad that it's like I keep blaming like Liv. Oh yeah, she'd never let me get away with it. She'd probably be delighted if I just went out. I'm just using the excuse to not do it. That's the thing.
Yeah, our long-suffering partners. Yeah, ever so. Well, I'm conscious of keeping you on for too long. I appreciate you coming on, but what I try and do with the podcast is, because of the name, Understanding Ultra, I try and like whoever I have on to interview, I try and get a bit of information from. So what tidbit of information, what tips can you give me, all your years of running and being in the running industry? What advice could you give somebody? Imagine if it was you were speaking to yourself coming into running now, into ultra running, what advice would you give a young Jody Raynsford?
I would definitely focus on doing much more speed work at a much earlier stage. If I was training for ultras again, I found that when I I don't know whether it was like previous advice or just mixed advice, stuff like that. It was all about getting out and doing long days and stuff. And those absolutely helped to kind of build the base, make sure that you've got a muscle memory, you know, that you've got that kind of conditioning. But certainly doing a lot more in terms of speed work, shorter distances, even breaking up runs, like 2 a day rather than longer ones and everything. That's something to focus on. The one thing which I've always been bad with, and which I would tell myself to actually get a grip and do, is food nutrition. I don't eat anywhere near enough on a race, which is incredible considering how much I eat on a race. But probably not the right things as well. So take that much more seriously early on. Like all the advice I've ever used has always just been given to me by other ultra runners who've really, you know, what they've done has made sense. Things like, you know, going into like the MDS, going into doing like 100 milers and stuff like that. Something simple as like, just don't hang around at checkpoints. As soon as you get into a checkpoint, just you're literally on a countdown to get out again. And I can't believe the amount of time that has saved me. You know, the amount of time I've won back on races as well. Like little strategies, just, you know, but always focus on you know, getting round, you know, getting to the next tree, get into the next corner, get into the next checkpoint, like, you know, all things like that it's just going to feel awful, but it's always going to be awful. It never gets easier. 100 mile is always awful. Don't do as many 100 milers. That's probably the other thing I'd say. Spend more time doing multi-day races. I don't know why it's transitioned over to 100 milers. I kind of got a bit kind of carried away just because I wanted to do one, and then I did another one, and then I was like, why am I doing like 300 milers? Multi-day races are the things that I really love doing. And so yeah, I think the difficulty with all that stuff is you have to, when you're running an ultra, your body does things that other people's bodies don't necessarily do. Like it's really hard giving ultra advice to people, because there are so many things. People go, oh, you need to drink this, or you need to drink that, or you need to have this, and things like that. It's really hard because with all of it, it's all experimentation, and experimenting as soon as possible, experimenting on long runs, and you know, and I was really good at experimenting because I'd want to write about it. And so, you know, doing stupid things like, I'm only going to drink coconut water on this entire marathon to see what happens, and stuff like, you know, stupid stuff like that. I'm going to try wearing a new pair of shoes for this race to see what, you know, whether it does actually cause a problem. I think you have to, I think the first thing to do is to kind of go in with that the idea that you are constantly experimenting, and you're constantly trying to find what your optimum ways of doing stuff is. I think it's really difficult to give kind of like generic advice like that, because everyone is completely different. But I'd certainly say that, you know, just have this constant thought of experimenting, testing, seeing what works for you. Certainly not listening to and being swayed by what other people are both doing in terms of the races they're choosing. Like the amount of people that's, like you say they want to run Barclays now. Like, you do not want to run Barclays. You're saying that because it's seen as the hardest. You do not want to do it. That is not what you really want. You're saying that because that's the thing to say. With a lot of things, oh yeah, I really want to run Spine. No, you don't. You really don't want to. There's like 100 races that you will want to run more than that. And I think that's it. Getting caught up in what other people are doing as well, and getting caught up, you know, all of a sudden going down a route of running stuff that you may not have thought that those were the things that you wanted to do in the first place, but other people are doing them, and other people seem to doing them. There's much more comparison now with, you know, anyone doing anything in terms of, you know, the speed they're going, things like that. You know, and that's one of the reasons I'm off. I don't go on Strava and stuff like that, because I don't need to be constantly reminded that I'm like the slowest person on the planet. But you know, I'm happy to run my own races. I think, you know, you just have to work out what type of runner you are. If you care about times, great, that's perfect, and you know that, and you care about times, and you focus on that. But like, don't necessarily try to affect other people with that kind of thinking. If distance is important to you, all those other things, you just discover who you are as a runner and what matters to you. And I suppose it's like anything, you bring how you are in other parts of life into the things you do in running. Very, people don't go, oh, I'm an incredible competitive runner, but I'm kind of laid back when I'm not running. Like, that's very unusual to kind of have that. So yeah, I think it's all about kind of knowing yourself.
Yeah.
And understanding what works for you, both in terms of the way that you approach races, and also the way that you do things like choosing races and being part of communities as well.
Yeah, I suppose you could sum all of that up with like run your own race. That kind of ties everything in. Yeah,
absolutely. But then part of me goes, oh God, I hate platitudes like that. Where you kind of go, Ali's always going on about being your authentic self on the thing, and I was like, oh, Ali, that's such rubbish. I mean, that's like, because I turn into, when I do race, and this is the thing, like I've kind of been banned from doing 100 milers, because I know if I do a 100 miler, that week afterwards, I get depressed. I'm like massively depressed, and there's nothing I can do to kind of get out of it. And so it's almost like if I'm trying to run like a couple of 100 milers a year, that's a fortnight of me being in a really miserable mood and stuff like that. And I turn, when you go out and you do these races, sometimes, like I did, I've done Thames Path twice, Thames Path 100 twice. Once I did it, it was great. It was fun. It all seemed to kind of go by, and it was things like that. The other time, and the other time I did it, it was awful. Like, I was regretting it as soon as I was doing it. I was wondering what the point is. Anything that anyone said to me, I was like taking really personally and emotionally. I was like, why was one different from the other? Like, such tiny little things can change away. But which one of those is more me in terms of who I am as a person? Neither, really. It's just something affects you in some way and you don't do it. And it'll be simple things that that you don't realize that affect you, but are just amplified by the fact that you're massively tired, and you think, what an idiot I am for doing this stupid race that again, for no reason whatsoever. So yeah, I think that's it. I have a real love-hate relationship with running, so which is pretty obvious. So sometimes I'm I'm really enthusiastic about it and absolutely love it, which is normally about a millisecond after I cross that finish line and I want to do another one. But every moment up until that point is normally cursing it. So yeah, I think it is just about knowing yourself and knowing what you respond to, and just not worrying about either what other people think of the races you do or anything. I a lot of the time on BBR, I don't really like telling people I'm doing races. Like, I'll go, like, I tried to do the Thames Path 100 once without telling anyone. But then you kind of get outed, don't you? Because then someone sees your name there and things like that. I did ask, I specifically asked James at Centurion, I said, is it possible for me to run it without having my name on the thing? And he goes, I'm really sorry, we can't, I know why, but we can't do it. And I'm like, oh, if I could just take my name off, it would make my life so much easier. But yeah, that's just me.
Well, appreciate you coming on, Jodie, and speaking to us. It's great to for us to benefit from your vast knowledge of running and podcasting. So I really appreciate you coming on. Is there what do you want people to go to for following you, as far as like social media and Hello Genius, which is obviously your marketing business? Where do you want to direct people?
So yeah, I mean, like, I'd never ever direct people towards Bad Boy Running. So I'm not gonna start doing that now. But if you're interested in Bad Boy Running, head to badboyrunning.co.uk, and there's plenty enough on there that will make it very clear whether you should be put off or not. Don't go diving into a podcast that early. What would be great if people want to pick up my book, How to Start a Cult. So if you go to www.howtostartacult.co.uk/book, you get the book there. In terms of marketing stuff, my agency is Hello Genius, hellogenius.co.uk. Yeah, I'm across various socials as Jody Raynsford. There are no other Jody Raynsford, so you're going to pretty much find me if you type in Jody Raynsford. It's pretty easy.
Brilliant. I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes so people can find you. So
amazing. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on.
No, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.